Welcome to part one of our two-part conversation with Tituss Burgess titled, Nothing to Prove, Only to Share. Help our community grow by subscribing to our YouTube channel, sharing and liking this episode, and following the Art and Soul podcast on Instagram. What's up, everybody? I'm Matthew Johnson Harris, and welcome to another episode of Art and Soul, where we explore the intersection of making art and spirituality. Now, if you rock with me, you know I start every episode with an affirmation or a mantra, and this is today's mantra. You have nothing to prove, only to share. You have nothing to prove, only to share. So no matter where you are, take a deep centering breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just sit with that. I have nothing to prove, only to share. I got that mantra and affirmation from a mentor, friend of mine, who I think that we could easily call each other at this point soulmates, Tituss Burgess. Mm-hmm. And I take that with me everywhere I go, every audition room, and I always credit you. I always say Tituss Burgess told me this, because I think it's important to establish when you have people in your life who pour into you, to then set the example to other people to, when they speak life, to also pull back to those people that have spoken life into them. And so we can create this process where people just feel seen and loved, and also to continue moving our names in positive ways no matter where we go. And I'm so thankful for you to be in this space with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness.
It already feels like home.
Oh yeah, that was my goal.
Yeah.
Is that for it to just feel like a place that you were coming in and hanging out with me. To give a very short story of how we met, just in case you forgot, but you probably haven't.
No.
I was at a premiere of a television series of a person that was a mutual friend of ours. And I was there, and I was in a very low place in my life.
I remember.
And I was really struggling. And I walked up to you, and we locked eyes, and we immediately dropped in the most honest, vulnerable, authentic way, to where I just felt naturally able to tell you everything that I was going through in that moment. Remember?
And you did.
I did. I was like, I'm going through this, and this is happening, and I'm not doing it. Like in a way that I could never think of doing that with any other person. It just happened so naturally and authentically, and you grabbed my hand and you said a very similar thing had just happened to you a few days before, which taught me that sometimes vulnerability can lead to someone else feeling like they can be vulnerable, that then can lead to trust.
Right.
And that has been the foundation of every time I've been in a room with you, that foundation of trust.
Right.
And I want to thank you for that night, because I know I wouldn't be where I am now if you wouldn't have opened yourself up so beautifully.
You would have been here. There are several different ways to the Wizard of Oz, but you would have been here.
Wow.
I'm grateful they chose us, though.
Oh, yes, right? That we met in that moment. And then we ended up going back to your place, and you were playing the piano, and you asked me to sing, and I hadn't sung in a while, and I sang Frank Sinatra.
And this barreling voice comes out. A lot of people, because you don't perform.
I don't.
You perhaps will someday if you choose. Right now you're doing everything else. But your voice there's such a majesty to your voice. It's a shame that people don't get to experience it like I have had the opportunity to. So, but anyways, keep going.
But even that, this meeting led to me singing, which in so many different ways, I see myself in different ways, but you would then validate that part of me, right? In such a beautiful, authentic way. And it was from someone who I just really adored as an actor and singer. So that was just another way of putting something into my cup that oh, there's gonna be many phases of me, honey. You ain't gotta worry about that.
Yeah.
But when that comes up, I know it's because that same night, you at a piano, singing along with me, having me singing Frank Sinatra, The Way You Look Tonight. I remember exactly what it was, singing at the piano, was oh, okay, cool. I can do this. Because Tituss Burgess does it, and Tituss Burgess told me I could do it.
Yeah, of course.
And it changed so many things for me.
You just said, well, you've said a couple things that
Go ahead.
Were so poignant. I want to go back to the thing about telling people about the mantra, and if you say that to someone, then hopefully they say that to another person. And obviously with any luck, it becomes cyclical, so we can just do that for each other whenever we need, and even when we don't need it. But then you spoke about vulnerability, and you said showing that you're vulnerable allows other people to, and if you copy and paste, I think the metrics will read as such. It's important to just show up. Don't you think? Because the very essence of who you are, whether you are sad, whether you are happy, whether you are in a dark space, whether you are brighter than the sun, it allows people to understand that humans are just shapeshifters, and on any given day you could be any number of these things, and you mustn't apologize for it. In fact, you must be very honest about all of them equally, so that you can get through the darker days. But also, if I've been the face of the sun, and I've shown you some darkness, you can at least know that you'll find your way back, because it happens to me, because I too am human. And that's what you did. You were just so beautifully human, and that's what I think ultimately, that's what all of our assignments are, is to show how human humans can be. Yeah.
How is it playing one of the most iconic characters in television history, but sharing the name of that character? But sharing the name of the character, how is that?
Tina Fey apologized to me. We did an interview together. I forget for something. She goes, "Had I known it would cause you such dis-ease, I would have changed the name." But
because people assume you're Tituss Andromeda.
Well, even more so, I have a great ability to discern spirits and energy, and I'm naturally empathetic, and I can scan you at your first inhalation. And so when I meet people, I try to meet people very open, but it's hard to be open when they don't see you. You understand?
Because they have this they already have a lens. They come in with this lens of who you are.
Exactly. And so the encounter is quite different, and I've had many people express their dislike for the encounter as though I had done something wrong by being anything other than myself. Grateful for the experience. It brought me into a certain power that I would not have had access to. And I can even thank it now because it caused me to flex another muscle, which is when anybody doesn't see you, not just because you're famous or a character had your name, but perhaps a superior or a peer or someone who's in a space that you want to be in that doesn't let you in. I've learned how to disarm it so that I can show you who I am, to show you why you want to meet me. You don't want to meet that person. You know what I mean? So it's been tedious, but it's brought me a lot of tools.
Yeah, and I'm sure in its own ways taught you a lot about yourself, and how people sometimes perceive us. At least I'm thinking, because I don't have an iconic character named after me, but how people perceive us can have two effects. And I think one effect it can also have is make you go deeper into your own well of who you are, of self-discovery, to be like, well, then who am I? You know what I mean? And then you realize what you like, what you dislike, who you are outside of this, to where I think a lot of people, I think celebrities in general, deal with preconceived ideas of who they are. Of course, always. But I don't think the average, regular, day-to-day person has to walk up to somebody and have to compete against,
yes, an version personality. Absolutely.
But the flip side of that, it could force you, though, to be like, who am I?
Yeah.
It could, in a way that the average person doesn't have to, right?
Well, I mean, I often go, when that happens, I'm like, Tituss. Slow it down. I know you had a tricky morning. This person just wants to say hi. Either allow the other Tituss to come up so you can get out of there real quick, or take the time to say hi and fill all their questions and such, and take the picture, blah 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 blah. Right. It has taught me a great deal.
We've had a lot of conversations, especially lately, about like meeting people as they are now when you have long relationships with them and allowing them to be who they are now as opposed to the versions of themselves who we originally met. And I've
What are the
seen
versions of people that you met in the distance in between?
Yes, right. And what I've always appreciated about you is that you've given people so much grace to show you something different. And I've seen you do it over and over again, Tituss.
Because I have to do it for myself, to myself, to show myself something different. Because I know who I am, and I know who I've been. And if I, it's the thing that we spoke about at the very top of this, being human and learning or sort of clocking all the different iterations that you will be in the next few seconds even. You know, it's important to be able to hope past what you can see. So I thank you for that, but it's something that I kind of do on autopilot. Because if I think about it, deuces, you won't get the chance.
If you think about what you did
think
before,
about yeah. So, you know, but it's important. I mean, we need endless second chances. You know, and we don't all have the same amount of bandwidth to facilitate that. But like, you know, the people that I know, the people that I've met, the people who have been wonderful to me, and the people who have been awful to me, some of them I'm working with right now.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
But and now the energy is lovely, you know. And so I don't want to take all the credit for that, but when they tell you who needs to be at the table, you have to take a back seat and be a passenger driver. And that is, I think, what is happening now, and that's what you are describing. And you'll know who needs another opportunity. You'll know, because it's like you're flipping till you get to the them that you know that you were going to encounter, so that y'all can prance on down the yellow brick road. You know, yeah.
But it's something I've always admired, and I also think it's something that is supposed to be the bedrock of both of our initial connections to Source. Like, we both were originally connected to what I call Source, but people call God or they, like they could put whatever pronoun they want on it, or noun. But we were both basically brought into it through Christianity, like Evangelical Christianity, Baptist, but like the church. That was our initial connection to Source. And through that, we are taught these stories of forgiveness, right? Giving people multiple opportunities to show up as something different, right? Repenting. But like, what I love the most about you is you have really made that a practice in all senses. But the reason why people can't make that a practice is because they're not doing what you said you do, is that you give yourself that grace. Yeah. So it's hard to forgive someone for something that they have done to you, if they don't forgive themselves of their own like things that they have done. You can't extend something out that you don't give to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's so easy for you to extend that grace, to be like, you know what, that person was horrible to work with, but some time has passed, they seem to have evolved, let me try to do something different, right? Yeah. Because you extend yourself that grace, because you know that you're always in process, and you're always growing.
Yeah. We all do. I have had a unique upbringing, and have only recently has my upbringing sort of been illuminated, and you know, the dark spaces have light on them now, and I realize what those things did to my adult self, and the child had long since been governing my adult, and in acknowledging that that adult Tituss was not in charge, I'm able to discern, I'm able to not go sit in the corner and harumph my way around people who hurt my feelings, but rather because I was able to do that to myself and go, girl, relax. You couldn't know any better. And it's the you couldn't know any better part for those people who don't do that for themselves.
They just don't have the capacity.
They just don't have the capacity. And when you come at it from radical acceptance, when you come at it from that angle, you can forgive a multitude of sins, And I think it's important, it's particularly now, because here's the other thing, and I said some of those people I'm working with to this very day, when they have an idea, a dream that they want you to live out and want it to be ushered into the world in a certain way, you realize, well, just because this idea came through me first, doesn't mean that there is an opportunity for another soul to be cleansed by working on this thing. There's not another opportunity for this person who wronged you or whatever to get free. And when you realize that these ideas are not for us, isn't the accolades and the acclaim, it doesn't stop with you. One of my asks before all of this, I remember being in my apartment on 47th Street where we met, and after this one job, I got on my knees and prayed. I said, Lord, if you give me this, and this, and this, and this, I will do this, and this, and this. One of the things I said is I will take whatever money I get, whatever pull or sway I acquire, and I will help bring those along with me who may not be able to find an entryway. And I got it. And when you realize that the dreams made manifest are not a result singularly of your ask, but because you know what to do with all the residual effects of the things that come with it, then it comes through you and out into the world, I believe, then and only then. But when you walk around acting as though you're the ish and the thing that's happening is because you were so great, chances are it won't have the reach to ultimately that perhaps it could have, because you are not including other humans in that. You are not you are not including all the other souls that will be touched and affected because of the thing. Our dreams have tentacles. Our dreams need people on the receiving end. Otherwise, you can just walk around having your own TV show and you watch it yourself. Have your concert and buy all your tickets yourself. But that ain't it. We're vessels for a reason, and vessels have things that pass through, and they take information to whatever is on the receiving end of it, and it's what's on the receiving end that must be at the end of your ask.
Amen.
Not you.
Amen. And you've always been a vessel, even since you were a little boy. Like, we've never. I think I've seen one person ask you about this, but I think it's so fascinating that you started off at such a young age directing your church choir. Like, how old were you?
I was 9, or no, 11.
And these were adults, y'all. This wasn't like a children's choir. You were directing adults. Okay, first off, how do you get into that role?
Well, I am a self-taught piano player. I later went to school for it. And my mom got married to my wonderful stepfather, and she then moved. We moved to churches. We were at a church that, the majority of my family were members of and went to. But when my mom got married, she started her new life, and she followed her husband to a different church. Incidentally, the accompanist for that church was also the accompanist for our old church. You don't have time for me to go into how it works in the rural South. But he later decided to become a full-time accompanist for a different church and left my mom's and my stepdad's church. Mm-hmm. Well, in the South, you either, there's two answers you can give to adults. Will you go and do something, or will you go and do it? And it's either yes or yes. You know what I mean? And so, she was like, they call him Tight. Titus, come on up here and play the piano just for the devotion. Okay, well, can you just get us through to this or whatever? And eventually, it just became, I don't even recall how it started or it just, I was suddenly there. And, I kind of, all through high school, all through college, I was the conductor of the Ministry of Music at church. So I learned, along the way, I wouldn't take anything from my journey now. The things that the lessons that I acquired and the things that I knew how to do, know how to do now, that education served me. But I do remember while I was doing it, I wanted to be anywhere, but I wanted to be young. I wanted to go out every weekend or, and do whatever, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. It was sort of a long-term college education, I think. And, having a little child correct.
That is what I was going to ask you. These are grown Black people, and you are 9 years old directing the choir. 11. Okay.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
That it's nuts to me.
Yeah. Well,
and they let it happen? How did that happen?
They took my direction, but you better believe when we got outside the church, they all just couldn't wait for the opportunity to remind me that I was as young as I was, and not that they did it in a vengeful way, but adults will be adults, and perhaps my delivery was not as well crafted as my adult knows how to talk to other adults now. But also, I was like,
I actually want to see that. Can we write the scripted series of this 11-year-old checking adults? Sopranos! You're a little flat.
Yeah, listen, it was what it was. And they had to roll with it. They had no choice. What are we going to do? Sing a cappella?
That is so funny to me. But also, it takes us back to the earlier point you made about being a vessel. And even though you probably didn't have the vocabulary or language at 11 to understand what was happening, and you said that you were forced to, because when an adult says something to you, the only answer you can give is yes. But also, you could show up and you could fold, but you didn't fold, right? You were a vessel. You were still showing up and you were activated in that.
That's interesting. I didn't even, until you just said that, it didn't even occur to me.
That you could have completely
that
failed.
I could have, I didn't even.
Because you've always been a vessel.
Well, yeah.
And you've always been open, and there's been an inner knowing that just kind of knows that you are supposed to be doing this work. I think that's what it is.
Well, I didn't know that I was supposed to be doing that then.
Because you don't have the vocabulary yet, but I feel like there's something innate in you.
Sure.
That is just moving, and it's a frequency that is vibrating, even at a young age. We see it. I see it in kids on the playground as early as 5. The kid who's like, okay, we're playing Duck, Duck, Goose. Who's playing? There's a director.
Yeah.
Right there, right? There's these inner knowings and these personality traits.
It's so fascinating. Because it's a, well, who's to say what age you should know what, but the fact to be able to house such a certainty when, you don't know how to make dinner or drive a car.
But you knew you had a gift.
But you knew, yeah.
You knew.
Yeah.
You knew even then, which I want to talk about also. For me, I didn't have a true queer identity or sense of myself to about 13. I knew I was different. I knew that I gravitated to certain things that weren't really for boys, and I knew that everyone else knew something about me that I didn't know. And
traditionally for boys.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. And that idea of that.
I think it's important to me.
Yeah, right, traditionally, yeah, exactly. And I just knew that everyone was clocking it, specifically in church. Did any of that come up? Being 11 and
My mom's pastor, who is at the church where I conducted the choir. Well, no, he knows. Would make from the pulpit what I think, he would call it Bible ways, but I think we're very passive aggressive remarks. They weren't so much, well, they were specifically for me.
Yeah, they were.
We were for anybody who was not like him. But I did not, while I clocked it, I want to be very clear, because there's so many people, queer people, who may see this, who are would-be believers of God and God energy and source and church and religion in general, is often used to weaponize us or deter us. So I'll speak directly to them in that. And if your circumstances are not what my circumstances were, do move slower and do not rock the boat until you are in a position
where it's safe.
Yeah. I had a little leverage.
Because they didn't have no music.
They didn't have no music.
That is so stupid.
That is so stupid,
like, you know
right?
what? This faggot is burning in hell.
Exactly.
But if we gonna have a choir,
what they gonna do? So I just dared them by existing. I didn't do anything extra. I was just like, I really had a young, and I think now that we go back over it, I think now that is probably what they were responding to.
Oh, yes.
Now that I don't think I've ever, that's what they were responding to.
The audacity. For you to step into this space, being queer and different, and know that you have ownership and leverage and power here.
That's what it was. It's a power dynamic. And for these people with limited
lived experience and vocabulary
and emotional,
and we give them grace as well.
We give them grace.
Yeah.
How sad for them, which is why you should always do your best to always show up at any stage in your life. But to that end, how sad for them that they felt dared by a child.
Beautiful.
How unfortunate. And how many times when you speak truth to power, is it met with intimidation from the power back down?
Especially if they can clock something that they feel like you were doing that is like immoral. So that you can't be giving us anything that we can actually learn or grow from because you're gay.
Exactly.
So then it even though what you're saying is truth, it invalidates everything that you're saying.
Exactly.
It's so, I'm just so inspired by you. And I'm happy that we both found an amazing church. Reverend Jacqui Lewis is also on this program. And we found Middle Church and people that speak life into us. But one of my quotes that I live by is, I don't think God cares who I screw. I think God cares who I screw over.
Ooh.
That's the God
that
I
yours?
serve. That's mine. Matthew Johnson
That's
Harris.
Delicious.
Right? He's not sitting there thinking about, who wants to serve a God that is sitting there watching my sexual activities but doesn't care about how I show up in a room. Thank you for joining me today and being two or more with me.
Yes!
Because I know so many people are going to be blessed by this episode. And just thank you for so authentically showing up as you in every room, because it makes people feel braver and that they also have the ability to do that as well. And thank you for teaching me that if I just continually work on sharing and not proving, that I am not only more in alignment with who I want to be, but also people can feel that vibration and they can feel the difference. And you've taught me how to share, and thank you for sharing with me today. I love you so much.
I love you too, Maddie. Here's to us.
Yes.
Here's to God.
Amen. Art has the power to bring people together. Art has the power to transcend language, and art has the power to heal. For those reasons, making art is a spiritual practice, so go make art everywhere. I'm Matthew Johnson Harris, and this was another episode of Art and Soul, and I'll see you next time.